everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you happen to be watching it today and it's a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. This is actually going to be the first of two recordings that I'm going to be doing today that will obviously show up on the channel in different days. So clearly you'll all be noticing the outfit that I'm wearing, and I'm wearing a very specific one today for the fact that we lost one of the greatest drummers of our time, Taylor Hawkins of the Foo Fighters. It was unfortunate, but any way that we as fans of anything in entertainment can pay tribute to our fandoms in our own special way, that's the way that we do it. But I just want to say before we begin today's episode of Must Be Read, I just want to say thank you to Cammie and April specifically for inviting me to do this episode, because the two of them have already done a Must Be Read FOMO edition on probably what may be the best comic book series of 2021, and that was the Tony Fleecs written and Trish Forstner artist work of Image Comics' Stray Dogs, fantastic 5-issue miniseries, and the two of them did the Must Be Read FOMO edition of the original. So great job, guys. You did wonderful. I think it's one of the best videos that we have on the channel as far as I'm concerned. But I also want to just say thank you both for allowing me, or really inviting me, because I would have let you guys do this by yourselves. But obviously today we're going to be talking about follow-up to Stray Dogs, which is a two-part short story compilation from Image Comics, Stray Dogs, Dog Days. So now that I've rambled enough, hi guys, good to have you back.
Hey Steve, hi April.
And I hope that every single one of you enjoys this episode, so don't forget to leave us a thumbs up as well as a comment. And if you want to see all the other stuff that's happening over here on this channel, especially those amazing thumbnails that April makes, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're up to date with our latest content. So the both of you, I really appreciated everything that the both of you had to say in regards to the original miniseries as comic book and graphic novel readers, but more importantly, as pet owners. This story was definitely something that gave you both some very unique feelings, if I'm not mistaken. Did I get that all right there?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an owner of animals, but I just absolutely loved everything about it.
You can't help but read something this dog infused and not have all the feels for all of your little furry creatures, whether they're dogs, cats, bunnies, what have you. And trust me, I've got the gambit of furry creatures.
I think April's got that too, mostly.
Yeah. Smaller zoo, but yes.
Yeah, you see, I don't have any, I'm not a pet owner. I decided that I was going to have children instead. So the most important thing that I found out is that we happen to live in a neighborhood that has like a plethora of puppies, big and small, all over the neighborhood. So as far as I'm concerned, we have no need to have a pet because there are so many lovable dogs all over this neighborhood. And I know that there's like everything from King Charles Spaniels to Huskies to mutts, of course, but all of them, except for a specific one that I'm not going to go into further detail about. I love all the dogs in this neighborhood. So, Dog Days, I definitely was very excited when they announced that the series was continuing in some shape or form, merely because of the fact that the first series was so wonderful and I just couldn't let these characters go. But I don't know about the both of you, but considering the fact that it was just 2 issues and it was a compilation of short stories, to be honest with you, didn't really enjoy this series as much as I did the original. Not to say that it was bad, but personally, considering how there was so much excitement and love for this one series, I really thought that we were going to get something much more.
Yeah, I agree. I'll jump in here. I am a cover by individual, whether that be for novels, graphic novels, comic books. I will gravitate to something that has a beautiful cover And there's no arguing that these two books are just absolutely gorgeous. And I know that there's different variants for, you know, the collector. I didn't happen to get on the bandwagon of all of the different horror films when it came out to the, you know, original series. So I definitely wanted to grab a couple of these copies and just to have them and have that tangible feeling. But when you get inside, I was, you know, I don't know any other way to put it other than disappointed, because I, as a fan, wanted more. I don't think that, you know, it necessarily needed to happen, because obviously we knew it was going to be a very limited series, but the stories themselves just felt very reminiscent of the original. I didn't feel like I was getting anything new. I didn't feel like I was getting this deep embedded story of these individual dogs that I felt like I was kind of promised when the, you know, rufflings of all this creation was going on with Stray Dog Days, or Dog Days 2, I should say. And I don't know, I felt like there should have been more. There should have been, you know, just some deeper thought into these stories. The illustrations, though, I can't lie and complain about that. The artwork is beautiful.
No,
So
Trish Forstner is an amazing artist, and I love the fact that when I send tweets out to her, she does respond to them. It was when she actually tweeted to us over here on That's Comical Twitter feed, when she told us, because I asked, are you drawing this short series? And she said, oh, definitely. So I'm like, okay, well, I was basically like, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm still going to check this out.
Yeah, I think if you read the original, you were bound to go out and pick these up just to kind of see what all the fuss was about, and really just to kind of relive this. I mean, let's be honest, we all adored the original series, so even if we got just a snippet like we did, it was still worth the revisit. But I just felt in terms of dialogue, it was really lacking.
Well, and not only that, there was something so deep and emotional and very connective with the original story. I mean, you got invested in each of these dogs and where this storyline was going, but with this short story collection, it just felt like a lot of them started to try and pull you in that same like gut-wrenching direction as the original storyline, but it ended so soon that you never really made that connection and got those feelings that you got with the original story. There were a couple in there that you connected with. I mean, there was like one story in each of the volumes that like really held up the volume, but everything else was so short and so segmented that you really didn't get anything out of it besides seeing the same story repeat itself. There was the dog, there was the guy, it ended, kind of thing. And you made no connections whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to sum up what everyone here is saying is you kind of felt empty after reading these books. After reading the original 5 issues, there was something there. There was something truly special. It was like, you know, April said it best when we talked about this series, when we were talking about our favorites of 2021. You said it got you in the Disney feels, it got you in the animal loving field, it got you in the horror field. So like it connected with you personally as well as Cammie, more so than me, even though I love this book, on so many other levels that I couldn't even fathom. And it's just really sad when you get something so good and then you just get something that you wanted to be just as good, if not better, and it wasn't. And it's funny because isn't that really what's going on in entertainment as a whole these days? I mean, like the fact that, you know, I never talked about this, but I know that I should have a long time ago with Cammie. The fact that there's hype now around the fact that they want to make a sequel to Beetlejuice. And I'm just saying to myself, why are you doing that? I'm like, why do we need a sequel to that?
I have said it many times in many different forums with a lot of different content creators. I am not a fan of reboots, remakes. I never have been. And I think that, you know, people can argue, well, you're just partial to your generation. Well, far be it from me to say, but my generation came out with some of the best movies. And it would be hard pressed for me to say that all of these reboots and recreations are just a regurgitation of what's already great. So obviously I do come from a great generation of creators and content creation. And so there's just some movies that don't need to be touched. And, you know, far be it for me, if you've got the money and the time and somebody's going to give you the platform to redo it, go ahead. But I can guarantee it's not going to resonate and be true to form and speak and to, you know, future generations the way the original does. Everybody says it, the original is always the best. There's a very rare form when you have a sequel or a third or fourth part that is better than the original. The only thing I've ever spoken to that for me was better than the original is Friday the 13th, because I'm not a big Jason Voorhees fan and I didn't get into the series until the third, and then after that I loved the series. But beyond that, I'm not a fan of redoing. And in this case, I know it definitely wasn't redoing, but the sequel, as they say, it's never going to touch the original, but it should be better. You know, I mean,
there should be an attempt.
It's better than what we got. Yeah, I really feel like this was a money grab, and I really feel like they played on the heartstrings of all of their loyal fans. And, you know, no faux pas on them. I mean, when you're on cloud nine and you're in your 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, ride the wave until it stops. I get it. But when you have a loyal fan base and people who sing your praises and are really, you know, out there promoting your work for free, because that's what we do as content creators. We're just a free word of mouth. We're free advertisement. Give us something. And I really feel like they let us down on so many levels with this. I mean, again, I can't speak against the illustrations, but the stories are just not there for me.
Yeah, I think there's something in timing it right when you do remakes or continuations, because I can see sections of remakes that if there is so much time between now and the original, say like 60, 70 years, and you do a remake, it's going to connect more with a newer audience because there's some generational things that shift. But when you're doing something immediately after you've done the first part, you have to have some kind of connection between the two. And it was touted at least Dog Days as getting a little bit more detail about these dogs. Yeah. And yeah, we got that. But the details that I think a lot of us expected, because we became so invested in these dogs and so connected with these dogs, is to further get those like very, not necessarily sentimental feelings, but that connectiveness that when you're doing horror like this, where you've got this cutesiness sitting right next to this very violent graphic story that's going on, that just pulls you in so many different directions, you don't get that immediately with this story. And I think because of how much the back section of both of these volumes was just setting up thank yous for all of the supporters and the dogs, I think that made it feel even more so that this was just a short thank you note and a little bit more of, hey, we want a little bit more from you at the same time as saying thank you, but we really don't know necessarily how to give you something just like what we just gave you.
Now, I definitely want to add to what you said earlier, April, and Cami, I believe you added that as well. There were still some good things in both of these volumes. So as far as I'm concerned, the two best stories, and it was one specifically from each. So if you both agree with me on what I think are the better ones, just say so. If there was anything else that stood out, let me know. But I want to start with the second volume first, because I liked the story about Victor, because what that story did was it really put the bow on the whole story, because we knew that at the end of Stray Dogs 5, the good had won the day, but we didn't really know what happened to the man. And in this story, we found that out. And I will also say I felt very stupid while I was reading that, because if you're ready for this little fun fact, it took me up until that one story until I actually realized that Victor was a three-legged dog. I did not even realize in the first Stray Dogs that he was a three-legged dog. And in volume 1, my favorite story doesn't even have a main character as a dog. It's the story about the cat. That story was just such an interesting little thing. You know, you want to talk about something fresh and new that was added to this whole tiny little short stories compilation. I liked that. Do you both agree with me, or were there any stories that stood out for the both of you? April, tell me, you start.
Yeah, no, that Victor and Other Henry, those are the two stories you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the two that held up both of these volumes, because you got to see a relational connection. So between Other Henry and the cat and the devastation of that, or Victor, where you get to see his human and the effect of the loss of that human to other humans, is just that is what I was looking for all of these stories.
Yes.
That you didn't necessarily get, because you only got 3 pages of how they ended up with the man. And I would have to agree, story of Victor definitely brought a wrapper around the story that I very much liked.
Yes. And I think that's what the fans really wanted, because of the fact that Victor was the character that tugged at everybody's heartstrings in the first volume, because he died. That's why everybody loved Victor so much. So to a certain degree, the fans get Victor one more time, and Victor ends up being the culmination of evil being punished in Stray Dogs Dog Days Volume 2. So I think that was a nice, satisfactory ending for the fans of this world.
Agreed. Those are actually both the same two that I had bookmarked. In the second one, I had Victor's story bookmarked to talk about, and then in the first, I had The Other Henry, which is the story about the cat. And I think for me, what tugged at my heartstrings with that is just the overall feeling of the cat, because as a cat owner, I know how distant cats can be, but I also know how loving that they can be. And when a cat chooses its person, and when it chooses to give you that affection, there's no other love as genuine as that. And to see how, you know, the cat and the dog bantered back and forth, you know, just like cats and dogs do, but then how her heart was completely broken when not only her people weren't there, but now her Henry wasn't there, was just absolutely devastating to me. Because one of the worst things as a pet advocate is seeing how many homes are displaced, whether it be because of death, divorce, what have you, and then who suffers? The animal, because the couple can't decide who gets the animal, so the animal goes to a shelter. Or, you know, there's an unfortunate death and nobody else in the immediate family wants to have the dog or the cat, so it goes to a shelter. So that's where it plays on the heartstrings of a true, you know, pet lover. And I loved those two stories. So yeah. I guess, you know, to kind of conclude my feelings on it, I think that because of those two stories, owning them is worthwhile, but it doesn't change my overall feelings for the fact that I still think it was kind of a money grab.
Yeah, and it's not just some of those examples that you gave, Cammie. It's also, unfortunately, what happens to a lot of pets in times of natural disasters. I mean, we had some very bad events in the last year, and unfortunately, my wife and I were sort of victims to Hurricane Ida, having some issues in our basement. But seeing all of these news stories of planes filled with abandoned or lost animals because of what happened in New Orleans because of Ida and other storms that happened, and also what happens to pets during things like war and terrorist attacks. And it's crazy to believe that, well, not necessarily crazy to believe, but I find it a very unique thing that the animals are just as main a focal point of these kinds of events, alongside the men, women, and children who unfortunately get caught up in these natural disasters. So the fact that we are a species and our culture involves these creatures that we appreciate and love just as much as we do our own species is extremely powerful.
Well,
It's
and
been a hard fight, though, over the course of the last, I would say, at least 2 decades. And for me as an animal advocate, because I have volunteered in animal shelters and been a huge voice for the voiceless for more than 2 decades now. But I would say that 20 years ago, we weren't as vocal about the pets and protecting the pets. I think that communities have kind of rallied around organizations like the ASPCA and the Humane Society's local, shelters, and they've realized that it is important for us to speak up for the voiceless, because they don't have a way of letting us know that they're displaced or that they're hurt or that they're hungry. And so as human beings, our mission is to be kind and to do unto others as we would want to done unto ourselves. And that includes the animals. They have souls just like other human beings too. And it's our responsibility. So, to look at situations that are happening in the world right now, like the Ukraine situation, that was one of the stories that absolutely broke my heart. 3 people lost their lives because they were delivering pet food to a shelter, just trying to help, just trying to be there for those animals. And they were gunned down, cold-blooded murder. Because why? Because they were being kind, and granted, I'm not trying to take away from the bigger picture there, but that, like I said, as an animal lover and advocate, sorely stood out to me because they lost their lives delivering pet food.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about the emotions of animals and connecting with the emotions of animals, because you don't realize the kind of bonds animals can form until there is this sudden change in environment that's so quick that no one can actually process it, which is what happened in the story. And I'm not going to lose it. Well, because we've been dealing with that here. And seeing some of those same emotions in that cat that I'm witnessing right now is really hard, which I think is why this story hurts me so hard, is
Right.
because I see that and it's real. And I'm going to be quiet now.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for those emotions to come out. I know that you are dealing with the loss of one of your own, and I understand that you are going through a lot, along with the fact that there's been some other things happening in your life that have just added to this. So I didn't mean to bring up those kinds of emotions, but again, this is why you're here to talk about this specific book, because there's that connection that you and Cammie have that I do not, because I don't have pets, but because of the fact that the both of you are here, you bring this extra flavor and this extra dimension to these types of themes in these kinds of stories, whether they're lighthearted or dark-hearted. So I'm glad you're here, plain and simple.
Yeah, it's well, it's hard to process some of this sometimes. It's good to have that kind of outlet and know that these emotions and these things I'm seeing are what other people can relate to. And I think that's the greatest thing about these kind of stories, is it evokes emotions that connects you with other people.
Yeah, and on top of that, this is something that I personally advocate when it comes to reading comic books in general. I mean, when I was growing up, the superhero was the predominant force in the world of comics. And, if people found out that kids read comics, some people looked at them as nerds or losers and stuff like that. But nowadays, comics are being looked at in regards to the creators that go into these fields and start making these stories, that they look at these like precious pieces of war art and like masterful novels themselves, even though they can sometimes only be 24 pages. But the fact that we are getting comics with these kinds of themes alongside many others, and that's also something that manga has had since the origins of its media. I'm glad to see that we're getting these stories that adults can connect with more so than children these days. That's why I think comic books right now, regardless of what you hear in the news in regards to the big two companies, in the indie circuit, like Image leading the front there, it's a whole other world. People are finding these incredibly good stories, and Stray Dogs is one of them. But one of the other things that Cami has been saying, and it's been a recurring thing that she's been saying throughout the entire show today, is I will agree with you there, Cami. I seriously hate to say that this was undoubtedly a cash grab. And especially as fun as it is to go onto some of these sites and see the variant covers based on horror-themed films and television shows and children's books and other comic books and graphic novels, it's incredible to see the creativity, but at the same time, you're saying to yourself, wow, they are really trying to get blood from a stone here. And also, one of the few things I didn't even realize, Cami, you held up the B covers, which is the movie poster variants that are cover price. What I didn't actually know was the other ones, they're all over $20 each. These exclusive ones. And you ready for this? In regards to Stray Dogs, the trade paperback of Stray Dogs and both volumes of Stray Dogs Dog Days, we're up to 127 variant covers right now. They just added 2 last week. They added The Descent and Paranormal Activity.
Now, I have to be fair though, because look at the world behind me, okay?
Yes.
I understand why these things are created, and
yes.
I am not foreign to going out and buying something in excess. I mean, I'm looking over here to my left right now, and I have a tower of horror pops, and I have like 7 Pennywise. Like, I don't need 7 Pennywise, but they appeal to me because they're from different scenes in the movie. And I'm like, well, if I want to video this, or if I want to, photograph that, I would need this pose of Pennywise. So in defense of a creator, again, I go back to ride your 15 minutes of fame. If people are going to buy it, make it cool. Got it. Obviously, I have a problem. I get it. I understand why these things are done. But, I think I've heard this conversation happen in many contexts and in many tones, because there are people that want to just kind of take it down to the minimalist versus the excess, and then, how much is too much. But I always take it back to the collector standpoint. Look at first, how long has that person been collecting? Is this their passion? Because like I tell my husband all the time, which is a horrible comparison, but I always say, hey, it could be meth, really.
Yes,
but
I've used that. I have used that. I have used that.
I try to keep it lighthearted. I do say, it could be Louis Vuitton purses, or it could be Louboutin shoes, so I do have a nice mix of things. But another thing that, again, on the flip side of things, I really hate it when people try to attack myself or other collectors that I know because we are doing what we love. I always say, and again, this kind of prefaces what I was just saying, look at a lot of factors. I'm 40 years old and I've been collecting since I was about 12. So this is not a culmination of what just happened in the last year or two. I do go through phases where I will collect things like crazy, and then I'll have a really big lull, Also, I work, and there's a million things that I could spend my money on. And I realize it's a privilege, and again, don't attack people because your privilege is different than theirs. Your means are different than theirs. some people are willing to spend $20 on a comic book, where some people, it's not tangible, and I understand that, and I am very blessed to be able to do what I do and collect what I collect. But I also know that this is my source of happiness. When I come home from work, when I come, out from the barns and I come back into this, I look at this stuff and I can pick it up, I can play with it, and I'm 40 and I'm not ashamed to say I play with my toys still, because it's my center of happiness. If I had a crummy day, if I got into an argument with a complete stranger, or if someone said something really nasty to me online, because as content creators, it happens all the time.
Of
People
course.
just free will speak to you and say really ugly things for no reason other than just to be ugly. I counteract that with taking a Funko Pop out of a box, or watching a vintage episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the 80s, So I do things that inherently make me happy. So if collecting 127 variant covers of the same damn comic book makes you happy, then by all means go out and do it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your money.
Anybody, as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're not hurting for you making your responsibilities, make sure you're paying your rent and you have food on the table before you go out and buy issue number 127. But by all means, do what makes you happy and phooey on the haters. We need to stop letting other negative voices stifle our happiness.
No, it's just it's the fact, like, when I have arguments with people, and it's like, someone says to me, you could use all that money to travel the world and see all these other places. And I'm like, you're never going to be able to pay me to go to Italy, even if you gave me a free trip, because I don't want to go anywhere near the Vatican because there's too many pigeons and I hate those things. I'm terrified of pigeons. I don't want to go anywhere near a goddamn pigeon. The fact that I live where I live now, where there are no pigeons, makes me very, very happy. I'd rather go get a pair of hiking boots and a backpack and go into the Australian outback and look for dingoes, because I just find that so cool. But at the end of the day, I get my kicks just sitting in my basement where I am now and watching an episode of Spider-Man, the animated series right now. That's what I love. And that's really what it is. You use your money and your means and your privilege for whatever it is you want. You want to go out to dinner 5 times a week and take pictures for all your dishes for Instagram? You do you, wackadoo. That's the one I say. I don't do it, so I don't care. You want to get 50 bazillion tattoos all over your body with your money? Go for it. I don't care. It's not. Do I say my body, my choice without getting controversial? I doubt it. But the point is very much what Cami is saying here. You do what you want, whatever makes you happy.
Well, I also have to say, as an artist, it is fun to see all of those covers, and it's almost like it's fan art at that point. And fan art is a whole genre of itself.
Of course.
But I mean, they're doing it out of love for the horror genre, which they are ultimately becoming a part of. But part of me, as an artist who likes to collect art books, I would love if all of these cover variants were in their own little bind up, little coffee table book that you could just set out and look at whenever you want, because each of them are gorgeous in their own right.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because a gallery book did come out, but I found out that it was like a very small exclusive for like a specific group of people. I don't know why, but do you know how much money Image Comics would make if they did a bind up like that? I mean, when it comes to comic book artists, people love Alex Ross. Everybody loves what he's done. And the 2 books that he currently has out, Mythology and Marvelocity, which is just pages and pages of his Marvel and DC artwork, along with a lot of writing by Chip Kidd, who writes those books. Those are so worth having, because it's amazing to look at all of those drawings. I mean, personally for me, when I bought the Stray Dogs volumes, I wanted to get the regular cover and the B movie variant cover And that was it, just because, I had the A and the B, and also because of the fact that, it would be cool to have a reading copy and a collectible copy. That's really what it's also for. But, I do the same when it comes to, I will buy more than one cover of a comic book, but only if that artist is just like that special. I mean, I've been buying numerous covers of Spawn, like issue 327, which came out last month. He did a variant cover that was a recreation of his own work of Spider-Man #1, specifically because it was the anniversary of Spider-Man, that specific title, and also because this year is the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man. So he made a Spawn 327 cover that looked like Spider-Man issue #1. I had to have it because I love that cover. And another Spawn title, which is called The Scorched, issues 3 through 6 are going to have a Todd McFarlane tribute to Jim Lee. And Jim Lee made 4 covers of X-Men #1 in 1991. So he is recreating all 4 of those covers with each of these 4 issues of The Scorched with his Spawn characters. I love that idea. It's worth it for me to have it. So it goes back to what Cammie said. You do what makes you happy, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Which is why I'm glad that I downloaded every single one of those Stray Dogs covers and posted them on our That's Comical share drive for everybody on this team to enjoy.
Yeah, I enjoy that because there's no way in Hades that I'm going to go out and buy 127 different variant cover copies.
But you got to admit, some of those things are incredible. I mean, I think the ones that I have the soft spot for are the Goosebumps covers. I love those. And I also really like the takes on some of the animated films. Like they made covers of Balto and Oliver and Company and All Dogs Go to Heaven. They even did Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Like some of the ideas that they did for these covers were just brilliant. I gotta give them props as a fan of those kinds of films. And even the fact that they've even done like a Something is Killing the Children cover and a Walking Dead cover and an Ice Cream Man cover. And speaking of Ice Cream Man, which I also love, there are some very interesting variant covers in that little grouping of comic books as well. They particularly like to make Dr. Seuss covers. And I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I typically gravitate to the variant covers, and I know that's kind of an argument you have with me all the time. Well, this is a new series. You should get the original cover because it's going to be worth more. To me, I'm not the kind of comic book collector that when I buy a comic book, I'm looking for the intrinsic future value of it. I'm looking at the value that it holds today. I'm the one reading it. I'm the one looking at it. You know, in 20, 30, 40 years, if I'm dead and gone, and I leave my comic book collection to, you know, someone, which will probably be my nephew, I hope that he gets some value out of it. But more than anything, I hope the value that I give to him is that it's something I loved. It's something I enjoyed. You know, he is my mini me, even though he belongs to my sister. He's exactly like me. And I love that. It's my way to just kind of dig into all the things that she did to me through childhood. It's like, you know, I stole your son, so it's cool. But nonetheless, I think that variant covers are a really cool way for artistic expression. I love to see the different ideas and the ways people interpret the story. I just, you know, there's nothing wrong with investing your money how you see fit. There's nothing wrong with buying different variations. There's nothing wrong with buying one or the whole damn lot, but do what makes you happy. And as long as it brings you joy, then that's what matters as a collector and a reader, to be honest.
I can see April agreeing with everything, being that she is the artist in the room.
Yeah, no, if it brings you joy, there's nothing wrong with it. I can see where completionists get really tied up in the anxiety of 100 and how many variant covers, because trying to track down all of those would be overly complicated. But those are the subset of people who are picking all of these up. I mean, a lot of us, be it, you know, mini collectors, big collectors, or people who are just picking this up because they really want the story, they're going to connect with different variants. And I think the joy of finding that cover that you really, really like, that connects you back to the horror story or the movie story that you just connected with is kind of exciting. But I mean, I'm going to come back to the fact that while I love comics, I am one who easily destroys things. So picking up something that I really like artistically in a format that you have to protect in a way that I can't necessarily constantly bring out and flip through sometimes crinkles me the wrong way, which is why I really would love that artistic coffee table book.
Yes.
Because then I wouldn't feel bad about constantly flipping through it.
I agree with you. And honestly, if they ever made it, believe me, I'm right there with you. I would totally buy that. Definitely. But to conclude this, I definitely hope that you both agree. I'm sure you do. One of the few things that I will say is that Dog Days did not necessarily leave a truly sour taste in my mouth, because even though I didn't get what I wanted from it, I still have such a passion for this story and a love for these characters. And if these rumors are true about the fact that a streaming service wants Tony Fleecs and Trish Forstner to turn this into an animated movie, believe me, I will be counting the days and marking it on my calendar to make sure that I am sitting at my television set excited to watch it. And as long as they are a part of the creative team that turns this into an animated film, I know for a solid fact that they will be making it with the fans in mind, and it will be everything that we as Stray Dogs fans would appreciate a great deal.
100%. And you know, if that happens, the three of us are going to meet here once again to have this great discussion about this amazing series.
Oh yeah, we may have to do a Who Wore It Best episode. That would be a lot of fun.
I like it.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the animation will be absolutely gorgeous, especially considering the fact that Trish Forstner and Tony Fleecs were part of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic world, and so I anticipate nothing but great things. I guess there's just one other question that I would want to ask before we put a bow on this one. If they actually decided to make more of this world in comics, would you both be interested in picking it up? Or do you think at this point in time that, oh God, it's going to be terrible for me to actually use this expression, but would it be wrong to let sleeping dogs lie, or should we have more?
Personally, as a horror fan, I know that when you beat a dead horse, the outcome is not that great. So I think this story ended beautifully. I think it ended as it should have. I personally don't feel there's a need to carry on. However, I could see them taking it from the vantage point of another serial killer. But it would be a really weird work-in, because it would have to be a guy who has, or a female, who has the concept of, you know, stealing dogs in addition to killing people. So I don't know that you could really rework that. It would be a hell of a feat. Can it be done? Sure. I'm not a creator in that, you know, context, but for me personally, it would have to be one hell of a story to reel me back in.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me that likes this final cutoff point, but there's also another part of me who loves the artwork of this story so much that I kind of understand that they're probably going to end up with my money if they do try something again. I mean, I might not be happy about the final result, but I am probably completely invested in this universe just because of all of the artwork and the storytelling and what they did the first time. Because I mean, I do the same thing with a lot of other universes where I'm like, I fully invested in the original and they keep coming out with other pieces that I don't always like. but I pick it up and try and start it because it has that connection to the original. So I can see myself possibly making the mistake of the continuation of something like this. But I'm very happy with what I have, and I don't necessarily need anymore.
Well, what I definitely need is, I remember reading Stray Dogs Dog Days 2 and seeing that advertisement for that new Tony Fleek story about the murderous bunny rabbit. I have no idea when that thing is coming out, but goddamn am I interested in reading that whenever it shows up. So I think that that is a great place to end it. So once again, Cammie, April, thank you so much for letting me join in on this conversation. This was so much fun. I always enjoy working with my fellow That's Comical colleagues, and I'm very excited to get on the horn with Andy in just a bit as we do a Creator's Notes episode. So watch out for that, everybody. But everybody out there, please put your comments in the box below. We'd love to know your thoughts about Stray Dogs and Stray Dogs Dog Days, because the three of us can truly gush about this comic till the cows come home. But until that, everybody, we will see you in the next one.